So first up today is Jutta, and Jutta is the Managing Director responsible for operations and technology at eyeo. She's an awesome human. She also co-founded the Adblock Dev Summit, which is very, very cool. And she ran and also keynoted at the first one. So it's awesome to have her back. And without further ado, I will hand over to Jutta. Welcome, Jutta.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks a lot for the awesome and very warm welcome. So yeah, let's get this started. I can't express how excited I am to now open the very fourth Adblocker Developer Summit. We've come quite a way together, including on-site events. Like I remember very vividly the first time we met back then, 2018 in San Francisco, and then moving to Amsterdam. And now we are doing the whole session the second time in a remote fashion, but also we are always improving, always growing, and that's really awesome to see. Back then, 2018, I had the honor to keynote that event as well. And if you allow me a very brief look back into that one. So the story there was that I tried to entertain the audience a bit with some like dystopian views on future advertising scenarios, like flying ads in the sky. And yeah, some of them have become reality meanwhile. But today, I want to stick a bit more with stick a bit more to the ground and also to business. And so still also this being the Adblocker Developer Summit, I will also make sure that the technical aspects here don't come short. But now let's start with something which at first glance sounds like a contradiction in itself. Acceptable ads. Like, isn't the main idea of ad blocking that ads are, well, not acceptable? That everybody should have the opportunity to, not see any ads. This is what we, the ad blocking community, really work hard for, to provide the users with the tools to enjoy an online ad-free experience. And personally, I have to add, this is why I signed up for my company, eyeo. I hate ads. I don't want to see any. I do anything to get rid of them. But I enjoy quality online content and the open access to it. And I know that good content, it needs funding. And the easiest way for online publishers to get funding nowadays, it is to show ads. And while I personally would be very happy to instead pay for good content, I know that this is a pretty elitist approach. So let's face it, advertising can enable quality content. But the current online ecosystem, it is broken. Users are seeing too many and too intrusive ads. Advertisers can't stand out anymore, so budgets move to even more aggressive ads. Publishers as well, they earn less in that scenario, and they have to allow also even more aggressive ads. So what can we do about this? This year sees the 10th anniversary of an idea that aims to break that vicious cycle, which is acceptable ads. This means that by putting the users in control of their online experience, they can opt in to see very few and only the non-intrusive ads, which then incentivizes the advertisers to run user-friendly ads. And also that cap on ads makes them more valuable for the publishers. Now, a brief look back into history. This whole idea is something that dates back even before the advent of acceptable ads. Vladimir Pallant, the original creator of Adblock Plus, already mentioned in a blog post in 2009 that the goal should be fair ad blocking, to include a sustainable value exchange for content creators. Now, for looking a bit more into acceptable ads and what it means, let me first briefly cover the governance and business of acceptable ads to provide you with a bit more context before I then move to the promised look into the engine room. Now, that idea of that virtual cycle that I just laid out, it had to be turned into a proper standard. And for doing so, we first needed to identify the proper criteria for what an acceptable ad is. And this needs to be done doing user research, asking the users for what they think is acceptable and what is not. And this can't be only done once, it needs to be evolving. So we are regularly updating the criteria and exploring the user requirements for ads on mobile, or checking whether there is something like an acceptable video ad. We also wanted to make sure that this standard is independent, that it is not depending on one specific company. So it had to be moved to what is called the Acceptable Ads Committee to safeguard it. This Acceptable Ads Committee involves 3 parties: business stakeholders, domain experts, and for sure, user advocates. And additionally to having this committee safeguarding the independence of the standard, also it is important that for transparency, all acceptable ads are added to a public forum to allow the full internet community the opportunity to submit feedback to whether an ad is acceptable or whether it is not. Now, let's look a bit into how acceptable ads is implemented on the business side. Here, eyeo acts on behalf of the Acceptable Ads Committee to enable publishers, the ad networks, and also ad tech providers to participate with acceptable ads and to enforce the compliance with the criteria. This means that if a website wants to show ads to ad filtering users, they first must apply to be on our allow list and prove that the ads which should be shown will meet the strict criteria established by the Acceptable Ads Committee. And it's worth mentioning that only large entities pay a fee for eyeo services, which means that overall the participation in acceptable ads remains free for around 90% of its participants. But now, as promised, let's look into more the technical implementation of acceptable ads. Here, I will first cover the implementation in the ad blocker and how ad filtering works, then also looking at the implementation at the publisher side, and then I want to walk you through the full allow listing lifecycle. So looking at ad filtering, first, for sure, we need to identify which ads are allowed to pass the blocker. And this is documented in the allow list, which is a filter list containing what we call exception rules. They tell the ad blocker which of the rules on easy list or similar to disable. It is also important to understand that ads can only pass if the user first consents to it. So in the ad blocker interface, the user is provided with the full control. They can choose between seeing no ads, seeing acceptable ads, or also as a third opportunity, seeing acceptable ads, but only those with no third-party tracking. Now, today, many ad blockers implement ad filtering based on the technology stack that eyeo provides. Some examples here on desktop are Adblock or Adblock Plus and also Kokok. And on mobile, a couple others like, for example, Cake, Allower, Kokok again, and the Geo browser. The core pieces in the software that are needed are the means to manage filter lists, including the allow list, and to manage filters, including the ability to disable them. Then publishers also have their share in the implementation. They need to add 2 pixel resources to their pages, which enable them to detect ad filtering users and then to serve different, that is, acceptable ads. SiteKey on the other hand, is a means for the browser to identify pages with acceptable ads. We use it in case of allow listing a partner owning a larger group of domains. This group is identified by a side key, which is a public key. We are using asymmetric encryption here, and it is used also in the corresponding exception rule. Now, when the browser sends a request to a side key enabled server, this server encrypts some part of that request with its private key. It then sends back that encrypted signature together with its side key as part of the website's header. Then, by decrypting the signature using the public key, the ad blocker can verify whether the server is legit, and if so, apply the corresponding exception rules. But there is even more tech included apart from just providing the ad filtering technology and the exception rules in the allow list. Because we can't just stop with letting ads of our partners through to the users. We promise the users to only see acceptable ads. So we need to check regularly whether this is still the case with the ads of our partners that we have allow listed. And we are required to do so by the Acceptable Ads Committee. We need to quarterly report on any violations. So on this slide here, you can see the full allow listing life cycle, which starts with us signing a new acceptable ads partner, where we then test whether their ads comply with the acceptable ads criteria. And if so, the filter developers add the corresponding exception rules to the allow list. Then our monitoring team continuously checks lists of pages for issues with allow listing. These issues can be either acceptable ads not showing up, or on the other hand, violations, which means ads being shown which do not comply with the standard. In case of such a violation, our technical account managers flag this issue with the partner. If the partner then does not remove the violation within 10 business days, their ads are removed from the whitelist. Now, as you can imagine, all of this is still depending a lot on manual work, with currently only a limited amount of automation in place. Which brings me now to the last topic in my presentation. Well, now I'd love to give you like the grand vision of the next 10 years of acceptable ads, but we all know that the industry landscape is changing quite rapidly. So let's rather look at challenges and opportunities we are facing in the near future. And in the interest of time, I picked 4 major challenges for a closer look now. So let's start with manual processes. As shown before, a lot of the work in the allow listing lifecycle is still manual. But moving forward, we will automate as much of that as possible. One important puzzle piece here is Mink, which is our cloud-based crawling infrastructure, which mimics user behavior and browses the web at a very large scale, covering more than 100K domains, which means that over 1 million URLs. Mink has as a component a multi-purpose bot to capture, evaluate, crawl, and monitor websites. Capturing a URL also includes processing various data points like screenshot, filter hits, or the DOM. Additionally, a built-in machine learning model is able to detect ads on captured screenshots, but currently only with limited accuracy. But we're getting there. There are many use cases for this tool, also in the context of acceptable ads, like, for example, identifying underutilized acceptable ad space, also the no-show detection of acceptable ads, and we are moving into machine learning-based acceptable ads detection. Now, another major challenge in this context is the size of our allow list. Well, size matters, especially on mobile and when we deliver the list to users within, for example, low bandwidth geolocations. We now started to approach this problem by annotating and contextualizing the filters, as well as working with filter hits data, so that we are able to automatically remove obsolete filters, which we call the filter list hygiene, and to only deliver relevant filters to the users, depending on their geolocation and platform. Let's move to the third challenge here, Manifest v3. It has been discussed at several Adblocker summits at length. And based on the great collaboration in the past years with the Chrome team, we have been able to find really good solutions to many of the issues Adblockers in general have been facing related to Manifest v3. Looking at its implications on ad filtering, we are very happy that the option to apply exception rules now has been added to the specification. What we are currently working on is to see whether we will find a good way to implement the site key logic that I just laid out with v3, or whether we will need to come up with a different solution on our side. Last but not least, and this is a very favorite topic of mine, which also has been discussed a couple of times on Adblocker developer summits in the past, circumvention. This means a website applying varying techniques to circumvent the ad blocker and show ads to ad blocking users. It affects all of us, no matter if you block or if you filter ads. But how is this related to acceptable ads? Now, if a publisher wants to monetize their ad blocking audience, they in fact have three options. They can show acceptable ads. They can show an ad blocker wall asking for disabling the ad blocker or for payment, or they can circumvent the ad blocker. And of those circumvention is clearly the most evil one. So what do we do in this regard? A couple of our brightest minds are working on this problem. I already mentioned the Mink infrastructure, which enables us to crawl the web at scale, checking for circumvention. Our anti-circumvention team then cares for tackling it nearly 24/7 by creating new filters and snippets, which are small pieces of code that augment the ways the filters can interact with the website. This then is also supported by our machine learning experts, experimenting with using machine learning to detect and to block aggressive circumvention techniques in an automated and thus very sustainable way. And I'm really happy that today Parinitha and Humera will present on that topic later in the course of the Adblocker Developer Summit. Now, with that really brief overview, let me come to a close. The past 10 years, I think, have proven that acceptable ads is a sustainable business model, providing value to all stakeholders in the online ecosystem by empowering a balanced and sustainable online value exchange. And now, moving into the next 10 years, this will continue to be a major driver for our overall vision to put you, meaning all stakeholders equally, in control of a fair and prosperous internet. So that's it from my side for today. Thanks for listening. And I hope you enjoyed this fourth Adblocker Developer Summit. Now, before we move forward with the problem, I think we probably might have some time for questions. So I hand over to the hosts again.
Great, thanks, Jutta. I'm Shwetank. I'll be the moderator for the next few hours. And once again, thanks, Jutta, for the illuminating talk. Most people don't realize this, but the online landscape before acceptable ads looked way worse than what we think right now. The impact that acceptable ads had in sort of cleaning up the ads landscape, I think has been huge over the past 10 years. And thinking about the next 10 years, which platforms do you see ad filtering taking on more of a prominence, if you have to think?
That's a really good topic, because we, in the end, it is always that both ad blocking and ad filtering needs to go where the users are going. So what we have seen in the past years was that the users moved from desktop to mobile, and we had to follow with our offerings. And while we were quite well established to block and filter ads on the desktop platforms, it proved to be quite hard to apply this model on mobile platforms. But it is something that we overcame, and where we now have a couple of very good solutions in place. But the question is, where do we go beyond mobile? Where are the users going? What are the next areas where ads will be annoying and invading the user's online experience? So I'm thinking here of like smart devices, also screens in the public sphere, like imagine traveling on a cab. You often see these in-cab screens providing you with a stream that mostly consists of ads. And the same then is true for any smart device that you will let into your home. So these are all areas where it is not that easy to get into, both from the ad blocking as well as the ad filtering perspective. So it is a question that we're constantly looking at, and one area that we are currently trying to map out is the topic of smart TV. I think this is something where we already know that there is a huge need from the user side to get both into ad blocking, but for sure, if the content, the videos are funded by advertising, we need to find a good solution there to again build this profitable value exchange for both sides. So I think this is one of the most important areas that we're currently looking at.
Great. And once again, thinking of the next 10 years, going a little bit more into the technical field. So in terms of sort of the most promising technical approach that you would see regarding ad filtering, you mentioned a few that that eyeo is working on. Which is, in your opinion, your most promising technical approach towards ad filtering that would be more prominent in the next 10 years?
Definitely machine learning based approaches. So we, as I mentioned, we already established a team that is only focused on automated ad blocking and automated ad filtering. So and what we are already quite good at is detecting what an ad is, but moving this to applying the proper filters, and then also seeing that it is both working on the blocking side as well as on the filtering side, meaning applying the right filters to let the acceptable ads through. This is the next big thing for us, and something that we really want to invest in.
Great. And I guess we're all out of time. Thanks once again, Jutta, for the illuminating talk. If you have more questions, everyone, we'll be here. You can ask in the chat, but also in the Slack channel. And till then, well, we'll see you back in 1 minute for the next talk.
Thank you. Bye.